Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa sallallahu wa sallam ala khatam al-anbiya wa mursaleen Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in wa ba'd. My beloved brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Alhamdulillah, this session that we're having is an extraordinary session in that it falls in between a very rigorous program that we established for this weekend here in Miami. But we wanted to spend some time with you, the youth and the leadership, especially from Mina, to try to have an informal session to discuss some of the issues in a practical sense that you're facing in organizing and trying to facilitate programs for the youth. And I want to be very straightforward with you. And you've heard many times how I will begin with this verse, which is very important to me, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu taqullaha wa qulu qawlan sadida, yuslih lakum a'malakum wa yaghfir lakum dhunubakum, wa man yuti' Allah wa rasulahu faqad faza fawzan 'azima. O you who believe, have the consciousness of Allah and speak a straightforward word. He would repair your deeds and forgive your sins. And whoever obeys Allah and His Messenger has surely gained a mighty triumph. And so in this spirit, I want to be very open with you and very straightforward. Alhamdulillah, I've had the opportunity to spend many hours with the youth, not only in the Toronto area in Canada, but in New York, in Minnesota, in California, in different parts of North America, in the Caribbean, and also in England. And I believe that the changes that the youth are going through are some of the most critical changes facing the Muslim community, and that the future of Islam lies with the youth. It is the young people, especially the young adults, who will have to take over the leadership in the Muslim community in the next 10 to 20 years. These are times where we will be seeing great changes, and the great scholars of Islam have informed us that the minor signs of the day of resurrection, alamat al-sughra, that all of these signs have been fulfilled. And we are waiting for the major signs of the day of resurrection. And so within this time period, we can see that even our own concept of 24 hours in a day, or 7 days in a week, or our concept of a year, even this is changing because time is moving so rapidly that if you look at the beginning of the summer, even this summer, it's gone so quickly. I mean, everything is moving very rapidly, and this is one of the signs of the coming of Qiyamah, of resurrection. And so young people today are growing up quickly, and children at the age of 5 and 6, because of what is happening in the media, because of the great social changes, are now witnessing acts of murder, of violence, and also becoming familiar with sexual terminology that in the past youth did not come close to these terms until they were teenagers and sometimes adults. But now at 5 years old, they're having discussions that used to be discussions for adults. Homosexuality becoming mainstream and normalized in society has changed the relationship of men and women. It's changed the terminologies that we use, so that even when the president is involved in low acts in the White House, shameful acts in the White House, and it goes over the internet, everybody in the world is reading this. In many of the Western countries, in France, in parts of Canada, their response to that was, what is wrong with you people? What is he doing strange? There's nothing wrong with this. And when the president of France recently died, his mistress attended the funeral. Everybody in the country knew that he had his regular wife and he had his underground mistress. That was not strange in France. So they said, like, what's wrong with you, what he's doing in the White House? He's an average guy. That acts like what Clinton was involved in, they were considered to be regular things. So for Muslims now, coming with a pure way of life, wanting to go back to the ways of the prophets, and we are now dealing in a very serious situation where to try to be a normal Muslim in this society is an extreme act. It's almost to a certain extent, or appears to be, like somebody wanting to live in a monastery, wanting to totally separate themselves from the society. So socially, we are in an apocalypse. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, مَا ظَهَرَتْ الْفَاحِشَ فِي قَوْمٍ قَطْ يَعْمَلُ بِهَا عَلَانِيَةً إِلَّا ظَهَرَ فِيهِمْ الطَّاعُونَ وَالْأَوْجَاعُ الَّتِي لَمْ تَكُنْ فِي أَسْلَافِهِمْ. Whenever sexual immorality appears amongst a people, and they do it openly, there will also appear amongst them diseases and famine that never appeared in the previous generation. And so incurable diseases moving in the society, and there's more of them coming. We've only seen the tip of the iceberg. Because of what is happening now, this, the social changes, we are in a very critical situation. And as I was speaking to the brothers coming in, the hurricane hitting Key West is no accident with the homosexual population. And we recently had an earthquake in Toronto. It was 5.2 on the Richter scale in New York, and coming to Toronto. We sort of got the edge of it. But buildings shook. And those who understand the changes in the earth and what is going on, we realize that it's overdue, actually, because we had the second largest demonstration on Gay Pride Day in North America, 750,000. And so it's long overdue for us, and we're expecting a major quake to strike our area. On the economic scene, those of you who study the economy of the world, the communist system, when Marx and Engels and the communist theoreticians studied the economic situation of the world, they recognized that the capitalist system would be falling apart. And so they organized the socialist communist alternative. And they tried their experiment in the Soviet Union, exported it to other countries. But because of the resistance of capitalism and its allies, they were able to break down, the capitalists were able to break down the communist system, and even countries like Cuba that became strongholds of socialism are now moving rapidly toward the capitalist bloc. But as Marx and Engels knew, and those who understood the cyclical nature of the capitalist system, we are about to go into a major recession. And if you go to the CNN, go to any international news agency, and you'll see that the economies of the world are all now shattered. They're trembling. Most of the monies in the world have been devalued. Even the Canadian dollar, which is a fairly stable dollar, this year has gone through tremendous changes. They broke the record for the low, for going low. They broke it about 20 times this year. This is Canada, which is a stable country, and right in North America, and a sister to the United States. And so we are in crisis. The US dollar, which is leading the world and holding up the world, doesn't represent real gold. It's only a trick. The Americans, the United States government has the greatest debt of any nation on earth. That sounds crazy, because everybody wants US dollars, but this is the greatest debtor nation in the world. So when all that comes to pass, and the reality strikes, we realize that the interest system has left us all in a state of confusion. Politically, also you can see the crises that are happening all over the world. And so from a number of different angles, and even in terms of the environment, with the changes going on in technology, the ozone layer being destroyed, we have suffered under El Niño, La Niña, right? And all the different family members in this family. And so there's probably other children in the family too. And so the reality is that the environmental crisis will continue unless the governments change their whole way, the whole way that they deal with technology. So they become environmentally friendly. But that is not, that's not wise in terms of making money. So the fast food people and the other people who control the economies of the world will continue in corruption right to the end. In Canada, a recent study came out to show that the governments in the north, the provincial governments in the north, make most of their money through taxing individuals, personal taxes, GST and PST they call it. But after that, they make most of their money through gambling, casinos, then through alcohol, taxing alcohol, and then through taxing tobacco. And these are all products that are known to be destructive to the personality, to the body, to the family, and to the whole society. So they're making their money and sustaining their governments through corruption. Okay, so we are really at the brink of a crisis. So therefore, the task that's in front of you to take over the leadership of Muslims is a very sacred one and a very serious one. And I want to say this to you, not to frighten you and to make you run away and just give it all up, but to realize that you're in a very challenging time period. And that requires knowledge of the deen. We have to seriously begin to study the sources of the deen. It also requires some knowledge of the dunya. You can't just have the knowledge of the religion and we don't understand what's happening in the society. But above all, it requires tawazun, or balance. This hikmah, wad'u shay fi mahali, putting things in the proper perspective. Being able to apply Islam with perspective and not getting caught up in any extreme to one direction or another. This is what has been the problem in our community. Our community has been ruled over, has been ruled by people who are secular based. I don't fault them at this. In the 50s and the 60s, when people were coming into America and Canada, they were for the most part coming from professional, the professional class. They were doctors, lawyers, engineers, accountants, and coming into America to establish their families. In the 80s and the 90s, with the great crises in the Muslim world, Muslims began to come in from all different levels in society and establish communities. But the scholarship, the scholars of the Muslim world, what was left of the scholarship, had to go underground in the colonial period. In order to survive, they had to wrap Islamic scholarship in what I would call a cocoon. You know the cocoon where the larvae wraps itself up, it goes into a type of hibernation, then comes out like a butterfly. So they wrapped up Islamic scholarship in the madrasas all around the Muslim world. And in doing this, the technological knowledge, the knowledge of the new developments in the 20th century went into the hands of people who were secular, who gave up their religion or compromised their religion in order to make material progress. And so the most important people in the Muslim world became doctors, lawyers, engineers, accountants, professional people. And if you're a doctor in Egypt, or in India or Pakistan, or most of the Muslim world, you're like a governor. Even though you're a medical doctor, you're like a governor, doctor. So you're a high person, you see? If you're an engineer, muhandis, then you're also a very high person. Okay, but you have secular education. So now the movements came and they established, the Islamic centers established, and people did the best they could do. But with the changes, the fall of communism, the fall of capitalism, secular system, Muslims could see that this is not the answer. So everybody said, we want Islam. And they brought the Maulana and the Sheikh and the Malvi out of the madrasa, and they said, you lead us now. Now this brother, and in some cases even educated sisters, came into the communities, knowing the Quran, knowing the Hadith. They could break it down, they could show you the tafsir, but if you tell them, apply this to the society, they're lost. Because they don't know what's going on. They're lost. Okay? And they're pushed out into the front of the leadership. Also in many cases, and I'm saying this with all sincerity, with all respect for those people who have Islamic knowledge, in many countries, they also represented inferior the inferior intellectual class. In countries like Syria, up until today, it is a government policy. When you take the examinations at the end of a high school, the highest scoring students in the top 5 to 10% all go to medical school, whether you like it or not. Even if you don't like blood, you go to medical school because you're the highest score. The next ones become engineers, lawyers, and then accountants. And finally, the people who couldn't make it on the test, you go to Quran school. You go to the madrasa and you study Sharia. And so the people who couldn't make it, the grade, are the ones who they send to the Quran school, man. Because the government is secular, and the government does not want any opposition from Islam. Now, in places like Syria, many countries, many people resisted this, and they took some of their good children, or the most intelligent children, I should say, put them secretly into madrasas, had them study in medical school, and they also went to madrasa at the same time. But unfortunately, it's the exception. It's not the rule. That's the unfortunate reality. So therefore, many of the scholars who are put out front and asked to deal with complex situations don't have the capacity to do this. They don't know what you're talking about. They haven't even entered the discourse. They haven't entered the discourse. That's the problem. So that's the reason why we're getting lopsided fatwas, right? Unwise decisions that counteract the da'wah, that destroy organizations, instead of actually build Islam, and also are totally irrelevant to the native population, to the Afro-American population, of the people who have lived in this country, who are the most likely to be accepting Islam, totally irrelevant to them, because many people come to America with the same concept of who is superior and who is intelligent, who is educated. So if somebody is not educated, even if a person's a Euro-American, not educated, that person's not respected. Okay, or if the person is Afro-American or Native American, they're not respected because of the brainwashing Muslims went through in their own countries. So what is happening now, it's all coming around now. And I believe and I pray that your generation is the one that has lived in America to a great extent, experienced the society, now realized the value of scholarship, and has this opportunity now to relate to the scholarship and know the dunya, know the reality on the street, on the ground level, and can begin to implement Islam in a practical way. What I represent to you is not a scholar of Islam. I'm not a mufti. Okay, but I am a brother who came from the ground level and was able to go and study in Medina, in the university, get through. Right? I was one of the first people to go through. We had to suffer to go through. Okay? Now the groundwork has been laid. And other people can memorize the whole Quran, memorize hundreds of hadiths, and they can get it. But somebody had to go through like the front lines and suffer just to make it through. So what I represent to you is not a person who had the opportunity to grow in Islam or to grow memorizing the Quran or the hadith, but somebody who has a general overview of Islamic studies, who has what they call dhawq. He has the taste, thaqafa, the general culture of Islamic studies, but has been in the field for many years. So this is what I represent to you today, and inshallah, informally, we want to have a discussion. Even though I sound formal, I just get that way when I have cameras in front of me. But informally, to discuss some of the problems that you are facing. And sisters can express themselves without a paper. It doesn't matter to me. You can express yourself openly, inshallah, and we can try to deal with this issue. So I want to open up the floor with that for any comments or questions that you may have concerning some of the problems that you're facing as young people practicing Islam. Okay, so the floor is open for any discussion. Please, again, feel free to discuss. I didn't mean to sound formal, but it's just something that happens when the camera is looking at you. Okay, so the floor is open. Tafadhal, brother.
I want to know how to deal with the situation where we have the...
Is that mic on?
Yeah, it's being recorded.
Okay.
The there is clash of cultures in terms of even relating to each other or in terms of dealing with an Islamic center. To put it in a very clear way, I am considered a kid, right? But because of the older people who are in the community. So I'm not taken seriously when I say something, or when some of these people say something, we're not taken very seriously. We're considered as those people who have no experience, those people who really don't know much, you need some more time and things like that.
Right.
But at the same, I realize that this is kind of a cultural backlash, but at the same time, do we continue to go with it and lose the time for having work done, or how do you deal with the situation? What is a wise way of dealing with this?
Right. Well, you know, in this question, the question basically is dealing with the reality of our communities, where the elders look at people even in their 20s and sometimes 30s as being young, and don't get them involved in the decision-making in the community. And how do we deal with this? You know, this is a process that we're going through. It's also a process of education, because in the time of the Prophet, ﷺ, he actually involved young people in leadership. And it wasn't just symbolic either. And the example you may have heard before of Abu Usama ibn Zayd, radiallahu anhuma, who was actually at the age of 16, 17, given the leadership of an army. And in that army was Abu Bakr and Umar and some of the big Sahaba. Now, leadership of an army is a serious thing, because you're going to take heads, right? You're taking heads. It's fighting. And fighting requires serious discipline and serious coordination. And the Amir is the person who has the right, the rule over the Jama'ah. His word overrules the Jama'ah, unless it's against Quran and Sunnah. So to put a young person in that position is a very important move that is being made. But it also shows the maturity of young people in those times. And if you see the Abdullah al-Khams, the Abdullahis, Abdullah ibn Umar, Ibn Ammar, Ibn Zubair, Ibn Mas'ud, Ibn Abbas, the 5 Abdullahis. You see Fatima, you read about Aisha, may Allah be pleased with them all. Many of the different Sahaba who were young, they were right there with the revelation coming down. They were involved. They gave their opinions, and their opinion was accepted. At the same time, it was recognized within that society that a person doesn't really become mature until 40 years old. 40 years old within the Arab society, it was considered to be sort of the cutoff point. If you look at all the prophets, except for Isa alayhi salam, they all received their revelation is 40 or over. So 40 really is a point of maturity. And there needs to be some coordination that goes on. But sometimes we will go to one extreme or the other. There's the one extreme of youth culture, where everybody's got to be young. And if you're not young, then you're out of it. Like, you're not really, you know, up to par if you're an older person. But then there's the other culture where the older generation becomes almost like gods. And this is partly based on societies with ancestor worship. Because in ancestor worship, your parents who die and become the ancestors, they become the gods over you. They get a type of supernatural power over you. And in many societies, many parts of the world, they pray to their ancestors, because their ancestors have gone into the void. They've gone over through death, and they now have a type of supernatural power. So you'll find in some cultures, people even bow down and kiss the shoes of their parents. I think it's parts of India that when you meet your elder, you kiss their feet. In parts of West Africa, you literally go down on the ground. You either bend on one knee, or in some cases you go down like you're doing push-ups. You go right down on the ground until they tell you to get up. Okay, so we're coming out of this extreme cultures. I like that, and again, we need to get a balance. We can't wait. Unfortunately, we don't have the time to wait. You have to be polite and respectful, but we have to make it known to the older generation that they now have to come to grips with the opinion of the youth. And it should be done in a straightforward way. Bring examples of the Sahaba, bring it forward to them. You have to challenge them, and challenge them to say, like, why are you not dealing with us? In our organization, ISRA, we have at least one position which is held by the youth. There's a youth group underneath our organization, and one of the positions on the board of directors has to be held by one of the youth. It can be more, but at least one position is a chosen person, chosen by the youth, and not handpicked by the adults. So it's the president's son, or the treasurer's daughter or son. No, handpicked by the youth themselves to represent them on the board of directors, decision-making power. Okay? So you have to demand. You have to demand it. Now again, it's got to be done in a respectful way, but a forceful way. You have to demand it. And I believe that, you know, the older generation now is seeing, and beginning to recognize the fact that they will have to depend upon the youth to make many decisions, because the whole language in the society is changing. And if you don't know that language, if you don't know what's going on in the society, you can be lost. So really, again, you have to demand it in a respectful way, but you cannot sit back now and allow yourselves to be dealt with as children, even when you're 35 years old or whatever. You can't allow this anymore. Any other questions on the sister side? Anybody has a question? Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm taking this class right now, and it's called International Relations, and we have to deal with the UN and etc. And I was assigned the country Iran, like my group. And like people make remarks as far as being Muslim, like women being covered as far as a veil and walking 10 feet behind the men and etc. How do I deal with that? Like how can I approach them nicely and tell them about Islam and, you know?
Well, what you're dealing with, and again, this question asked by the sisters is that she's taking a course, and this is in college, university, high school, and this is in high school. She's taking a course, and you know, as a Muslim woman, she's being stereotyped. Is really what it is. You're being put into that corner, and what happens many times with the sisters is that when they see you in the society with a veil, they think that that veil or that scarf covers your brain too. It doesn't just cover your hair, but it covers your brain. This is what they think. And then they expect, you know, the person to be totally out of it. And if you speak with an American accent, then they really pass out, because they can't believe that you look like this. When I come into a store dressed like this and I talk, they faint. They cannot believe what is in front of them. But this is part of their education. They have been miseducated, and stereotyping has been used. And you have to be very straightforward and very open. Challenge them. In the same way they're using these terms, homophobic, in the same way like racist, and they're using all these terms, we have Islamophobia. We're trying to spread this word now, Islamophobia. Okay, this is a new phobia, which is all around. It's stereotyping, where they have this image of a Muslim as being, first they have this exotic image, Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves, and Aladdin. And the girls have veils, and but at the same time they're scantily dressed, and it's a lecherous old Arab man. It's like Aladdin, right? They have this thing. The other image is frightening, terrorist. That underneath that chador or that hijab, is an MK-47 or an AK-47, a hand grenade or something like that. This is what they're thinking. And then the latest thing now, which we were talking about the other night, they've taken it further now. There was True Lies with Arnold Schwarzenegger. There was Delta Force with Chuck Norris. There was Executive Decision, Steven Seagal and them. Okay, but now there's The Siege. And this is the most serious one. Because now they want to put us in concentration camps. And they're using the CIA, FBI, and the military together to fight against Muslims in New York, and then to put people in concentration camps. So this is the most serious one. So it has to be challenged. And you've got to be very upfront and very straightforward and say, look, let us realize first that there is stereotyping and there is Islamophobia. Challenge them. Challenge them. And say, I bet that you have certain images of Islam. Put it out there. Now, when they want to if they're open-minded and they say, okay, what is the reality? Then maybe you can even bring some tapes in. We have some tapes where different speakers, male and female, have tried to deal with this issue of women in Islam and given rebuttals. Sister Amina Asilmi has got a tape which is used by many people that is a good rebuttal to the whole question of women in Islam. But still, you know, you have to be very straightforward and, you know, and try to break down some of the stereotypes that they have, because this is actually what is going on. Yeah.
We also have pamphlets, you know, like the yellow pamphlets? Just shorter and easier to give to somebody if, you know, they say something about hijab or something and they don't get it. You can always just hand them a pamphlet. It's easier.
Right, the Dawah pamphlets, right, this is another good way to deal with that. We have also a videotape, which is Sound Vision. I brought a couple of them with me. It's called Hijab, an Act of Faith. This is done by the Sound Vision. It's an excellent video with the testimony of sisters and why they actually wear the hijab. It's done in a very progressive way, a modern type of photography. And you know, if you're interested in that, we have that there. Something like that can be shown to them, and they'll really be surprised.
Now, like okay, like I'm working with the group now, and what if there's stuff that comes up that downgrades Islam? Do I have to, like, well, I obviously have to, but like, how do I deal with that? Examples?
Okay, well, first thing, you know, anything that comes up that's downgrading Islam, that you run into, first we have to document the information. And you document the information, you know, so you have all your sources, that you have the actual original documents, so it's clearly there. Then you contact, you know, the other MINA organizations. Also, there is CARE, the CARE organization out of Washington, D.C., that's doing a lot of good work in terms of dealing with attacks on Islam. So you contact them, and you know, we actually have people now who will move against this. It's very serious. You can bring in a speaker, somebody, you know, from the MSAs or the masjids to speak in the class, but don't let anything go by. Anything. In the same way that the Jewish students, if you even, you know, talk slightly against the Holocaust, right, or anything to do with Jewish history, they document you and they go right to the Anti-Defamation League, B'nai B'rith, whatever it is, and they move on you legally. They'll go to the president, they'll go to the school, they'll go to the authorities, and they'll call you to account. So Muslims have to begin to do this. Islamophobia. We have to spread this terminology all around so that people will begin to get sensitive to the fact that the right-wing elements in this society, in the same way they've targeted Native people, African-American people, and other groups, even Jewish people to a certain extent, that they're now targeting Muslims as a threat to their security or whatever. So we got to spread this Islamophobia and challenge them anytime they say anything against Islam. Okay, any other questions, brothers have? Yes, brother. Alaikum salam.
I have friends at school, and Muslim friends, and I mean, they're pretty, like, you know, kind of messed up, I'd like to say. Like, they're like that. So I was just wondering, like, how I could help them out, like, try and bring them back. I mean, like, in that sense, you know, help them out, and, like, because they're, like, really way out there. They've really been, like, modernized or whatever. They're out there, like, smoking weed and going to parties and all that type of stuff. So, I mean, just want to know, like, how I could help them out. And
well, you know, it's a very difficult situation, you know, because the pull of the society, once you get in the loop and you're in that society's framework of thinking, you know, they provide a lot of negative alternatives, things to do and, you know, supposedly, you know, ways of feeling good. Number one, it's important for the youth organizations to have alternative programming. So in other words, if you say to somebody that it's dangerous to go to that party because, you know, you can get substance abuse, right? Crack cocaine, you can get addicted to crack. You know, if you have a relationship, male or female, you can get HIV positive, you can become HIV positive, very possible, herpes. You can show them examples of this. I have cases of Muslim brothers, you know, I won't say which country he come from, but the brother, you know, was out living that type of life. Then he became an active person in the community. And then he started having problems and he went to the doctor. He's got herpes, man, genital herpes. And that's incurable. And then he's asking me, can I make my intention on this sister and not tell her? And then as we're just about to get married, he would say, by the way, I happen to have herpes. I said, you can't do that, man. But he's in crisis, man. He's in crisis. So you can give a lot of good concrete examples as to what the life of the dunya does to you, because people are dying now out in that dunya. We can give examples. However, if the person now opens and listens to you, you have to have an alternative program. This is why basketball programs with the brothers on Friday, Saturday nights, youth programs, even like recreation, youth recreation, things to do, active things to do. This is important because a lot of it is just based on this free time that people have. And there's nothing to do, and the plaza is there, the disco is there, whatever, the partying. We have, in Canada, Bhangra. You have Bhangra here? No. You know this Bhangra? This is Indo-Pakistani masala, type music, Apache Indian and all these type of mix between rap music and, East Indian music. And they have Bhangra parties where people of East Indian, Indo-Pakistani descent, whether they come from the Caribbean or India and Pakistan, or whether they're Sikh, Muslim, Hindu, Zoroastrian, whatever it is, they go to these Bhangra parties. And some of the Muslims, iyadhu billah, they even took off Friday for Jummah, and they had a Bhangra around 12 o'clock noon on Fridays. And that's where they were. And they told the high school they were at Jummah. So we have some similar problems to this. So therefore, give them the examples. Talk straight language to them. Okay, and then you have to try to provide some alternative. And it's a process. All of us are under this temptation. Nobody's free of this temptation. It's for everybody. It's all around. You can take the exit and go to South Beach, right? Or you can go to another part of Miami. You go down there and you're moving around amongst the people, you're in temptation. So this is what has happened. But we have to have something to do. You have to have something to do. So this really is the crisis that we're in. Okay, any other questions? Yeah.
What about the people who are like, I go there, but it's like I don't have any bad intentions. I just want to go hang out with my friends. It's not like I'm doing anything wrong. What do you say to that?
Okay, well, you have to be realistic. This sister came to me one time. We were talking about, well, she wanted to go to the party. I'm going to talk to you in straight language, right? So she wants to go to the party. She said, but I'm not going to dance. I'm just going to go to the party. So, oh, you're going to go to the party? So you're standing there, and somebody says, can I have this dance? And you're going to say, oh, no, I'm a good Muslim, and I'm just watching. You can't do that. They look at you like you're crazy or something. Like, why are you here? And then why put yourself under that temptation? If it's a fast of Ramadan, you're going to go into a restaurant with beautiful smelling food and sit around and smell the food all the time and look at it? Right? Why do we put ourselves in that temptation? Okay, so really we have to be very straightforward with them and tell them that, if you're putting yourself in a temptation like this, then you are endangering yourself. And the way of Islam, and when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about adultery, fornication, adultery, He says, وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا إِنَّهُ كَانَ فَاحِشَةً وَسَاءَ سَبِيلًا. Don't come near adultery. It is an abomination, and it will destroy the whole path. Everything it will destroy. Your reputation, your family, your body, everything can be destroyed. So Allah didn't say, don't do it, don't commit zina. He said, don't come near it. Don't come near it, because it's a natural thing to have the relationship. That's how the species continues. Allah made us like that. So we stay away from it until the time when we're ready to get married. So this is the reality. So we have to let people know how dangerous it is to come close to things like that. And plus, if you go to one of these parties or dances and somebody offers you something to drink, they have these drugs now, these pills they'll slip in, right, which can make you high enough that you lose control of yourself. And then they can manipulate you, to do what they want. So there's a lot of danger in going to these type of scenes as a Muslim. Okay, so you have to be very straightforward when you talk to the brothers and sisters in this situation. Yeah.
Another thing, diversity is like this huge issue now, and like everyone's talking about diversity and whatever, and then they go into like gay culture and how everyone should accept the gay culture, and the people who are like, well, it's not hurting you, let them do what they want to do. Right. But then yeah, this is a good question. Yeah, this is a very, very difficult issue, because really the whole question of Islamophobia now, it really has put us in a very defensive, weak type of position. And what we've tried to do is to be proactive and positive in the sense that we're speaking for Islam. In other words, we're not attacking gays, we're not gay bashing. We're stating what we believe. And we have the right to state what we believe. Like, there's no law that says that you cannot say within Islam, we don't believe in this. We believe in the marriage of a husband and a wife, man and woman. This is what we believe in. So you keep talking like that. Because legally, you don't have the right, to be attacking them legally and whatnot. You can
There was one of the brothers recently, a good brother. He was working at Symantec. You know, he's really good in computer programming and whatnot, so Symantec. So he was working there, and he had gone to this outdoor barbecue, which was run by the city. And it was done in the gay section of Toronto. And so all these men were couples were coming, weird looking, and they were doing things. And you know, so he couldn't control himself. And so the brother, you know, he went to work the next day, and he was talking to some of his friends, people who he thought was his friends on the job, and saying about how he had gone to this barbecue and he thought it was disgusting what he saw, like, and he couldn't stomach what he was seeing. He thought it was a filthy, disgusting thing, and he was saying it in a very respectful way. The next day, he got called down the office, and they said, you know, did you say the following terms? Did you say these words? And so he admitted, you know, well, he said, well, this is what my religion says. You know, this is what I believe personally. And he was fired the next day. Fired. Within 3 days, he was off the job. And he is an excellent worker in Symantec. But he didn't know that one of the people he was talking to was gay. He didn't know. Right? And so they moved that fast. And according to the laws now, you know, it is like calling somebody a racial name if you say this. So it puts us in a weak position in a sense when you're working and you're in school. However, we can state clearly what our religion, what we believe in our religion, and we can take this strong stance, you know, whenever people ask us about our own way. And you don't have to say that you agree with it. You don't have to say that. The only thing you cannot do legally is attack it. You're not supposed to attack it. This is where they come to us. If they come within our own realm, then we will say exactly what we want to say. Okay, some of us will go all the way out because we don't care anymore. Like when they came to Toronto, some of them came, the gays in Toronto were Muslims. Well, iyadu billah. They were from Muslim families, and they were on the gay strip trying to get picked up. And it was racism, so the white gays only wanted white. So all the brown ones found themselves together. And they went to the gay community center and they complained, and the government gave them a grant. And they called them a minority within a minority. And so they formed a group called Min Alaq. Like the Quran says, خَلَقَ الْإِنسَانِ مِنْ عَلَقٍ. That man has been created from a blood clot. It's always talking about these things. So they formed this group, and they sent out flyers, and they called it something like homosexual, as they call it gay, lesbian, homosexual, Islamic support group. And they said they want a new tafsir of the story of Lut alayhi salam. They want a new tafsir. And they wanted to start their own Islamic center, a masjid, for gays, with a gay imam. That's what they wanted. And they came to our community. This is how they came to the Christians too. They broke the Christians down, right? But, you know, the leadership took a strong stand. We took a real strong stand against it. And openly, you know, condemned it. And, you know, said openly to the newspaper, this is our position. We made it very clear. We're totally against it. It's not within Islam. Then they said, what would you do if somebody comes to your masjid and he wants to be a Muslim and he's gay? What will you do? And so I told him very clearly, I had a case of a brother who came in my office and he cried and he said that he was, you know, he was gay. I said, like, you know, what happened to you, man? And he said, my father abused me. A'udhu billah. He's a Muslim, right? So I felt sorry for the brother, and I said, do you realize that there's something wrong with you now, psychologically, because of this abuse? And he said, yes. So we work with the brother, sent him to a psychiatrist, and then work with the brother, and now he's part of the community. So this is a very crucial issue, and it requires some wisdom in the words that you use. They'll accuse you of homophobia. So you have to watch your words, whoever you're with. However, you have the right to state clearly what Islam believes, what it says, and what you believe as a Muslim. Because even the Catholics, you know, to a certain extent, still maintain, and the Orthodox Jews still maintain a position where they don't accept it. Sodom and Gomorrah, Lut, the prophet Lot, or Lut alayhi salam. Those stories are clear. In the Bible, what's left of the Bible, it's very clear that it is an abomination. They're trying to change the text and make a new tafsir and whatnot now, but it's very clear within their texts. Okay? Yes, brother.
I have a question to speak on that. The Christian groups, they say that they speak on those rallies a lot.
Yeah.
How come they have the freedom towards this speaking, like going out and having protests against gays in the community? Like, what gives them the right and not us the right to do that?
Well, the Muslims should actually be involved. That's one of the things that we should be involved in. I mean, our leadership has been too timid and shy to come into, or they're too busy fighting with each other about which school of thought you are, right, or which organization you are, or some petty differences. They're too busy with that, fighting over who controls the masjid or whatever, whose uncle is the treasurer. So they don't have time to really deal with the issues, and that's one of the issues. We should be there in a respectful way, a dignified way, opposing homosexuality. It's our right to do that. And there's some leading people who are doing. I think one of the Green Bay Packers, some football player, recently came out. What's his name?
Reggie White.
Right, Reggie White. He came openly with it. Has anything happened to him yet? No. And he's still taking his position. So we can take stands like that. But it does require that we are united and we're strong in our belief. We have to be united to do this. He has backing. He has people in backing him when he did this. He got some people in back in high places. Okay, another question.
I think that the importance of being able to work with the society is usually lost among the youth and the parents and everybody involved, because people don't think, first of all, there's this misplaced vision that we should not work with this society. One thing, that this is a kufr society, therefore anything and everything they represent is kufr and wrong, and therefore we cannot participate in anything.
Right.
Which is one reason why you don't see a lot of Muslims working with these environmental groups or these anti-homosexual groups and things like that. And I think that it is very important that we start grooming the youth towards taking over these kind of organizations, whether it be political, environmental, or anything that is good in society. Right. And I think that we have not realized that thing, because we don't think about 20 years ahead, what's going to happen in 20 years. And people are still afraid of politics. They're still afraid of getting involved with anything that is not coming from the masjid itself. Because when you mentioned about the movies, the Steven Spielberg, who's one of the biggest directors in this country, his company is coming out with a movie called The Prince of Egypt. It's an animated film, The Prince of Egypt. But he invited AMC and CARE to come and review the movie, just to make sure that everything was fine with it. So on one hand you have this going on, and on the other hand you have movies like The Siege coming out. So we see that it has an effect, but not a complete one, where we have not exercised our total power.
That's right.
As it exists. And I think, what do you think? How far do you think we need to push this as far as the youth?
Well, this is really where that balance is required. That grounding in knowledge, and also the ability to work within the society. This is where balanced leadership is needed. And I think we should go as far as we can before it's too late, so that anybody who does anything will be afraid of these organizations. That's why if you do anything about Israel or the Jews, you got to go to B'nai B'rith. If you don't get through B'nai B'rith Anti-Defamation League, you can forget it, man. People are afraid. They have to be afraid of us. And CARE is doing an excellent job. These groups are doing excellent. They should be supported strongly in standing up. We have Muslims in good positions, very wealthy Muslims around. That if we support these things and we come out openly, and start to speak against this openly, then there's still time for us to stop it before it goes too far, over the edge. And really, we need to seize the time right now. Yeah. Any sister has a question for us, bro? Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
You just mentioned organizations like CARE and AMC, etc., in response to Brother Mustafa's question. But what I wanted to ask was, well, what can the youth, the average 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, what can they do? Because these, you mentioned, you have brothers who are very wealthy or helping out, who are working with environmental agencies, who are trying to get the clout that the, Anti-Defamation League or whatever has. What can the youth do? They're not in those positions. Their sphere of influence is significantly smaller, but they have the drive, they have the desire to want to help.
Yeah.
So what can they do?
Well, the youth can be involved in doing a lot of the groundwork and, doing a lot of the technical work. Even if they're not, they don't feel they're old enough or qualified enough. Because, for instance, in a lot of the work done by CARE and the AMC requires people to be online, to have a good knowledge of the internet and, the communications. And the youth has the best orientation towards this technology. It's in the youth now. So there's a lot of work that you can do. Even in Toronto, some of the youth have opened up a chapter of CARE in Toronto. And it's some young people who are involved in that organization now who are trying to do this work. So there's a lot that you can do yourselves, using the internet, using the technology, which is available in most of your homes. And some of the older generation still doesn't, have that ability, to go online and, to really move, the information around. So I think that you can help like that. You can encourage the older generation, in these areas. And you can even bring this information to the community, where people don't know about it.
This question was on the issue of the youth seeking knowledge.
Yeah.
Because I've seen in many cases that a youth, they might pick up a book and they'll read it, and then they'll try to implement that book not only on themselves first, but on everyone else.
Yeah.
And in that book, there may be some ambiguities that are not clear, because most of the books, as you know, are translations, and a lot of the translations are vague, and they don't get the point across as clearly as Arabic does. So what can you suggest as an ideal way of going about seeking knowledge, so we avoid that confusion? And
well, it's important with communication. Because as the Quran says, ask those who have knowledge if you don't know. So that, you need to be in touch with people who you consider to be balanced. To be in touch with them and then ask them questions. When you come into areas that seem to be unclear, and to be in touch with balanced scholarship and get some answers to your questions. And the more knowledge that you get, the more you seek knowledge, the clearer it will become to you. See, at first, even when you start learning Arabic and start getting into it, it can become really confusing, especially when you see the difference of the ulama, ikhtilaf al-ulama on an issue. You start going crazy. You think, wow, there's like 15 positions on this one thing, what do I do? But the more you get into it, the clearer it becomes. That's the reality of it. So somebody in all the groups, in every area, has to go all the way. Somebody's got to really study. That's why in Syria and in Egypt and in some new places, new schools that people had not traditionally gone to, brothers and sisters are leaving communities now from the youth and going there to spend some time, 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and then come back. That process is on right now. It's still very difficult to live within Muslim countries now because of the economic crisis and social crisis and political, but it's being done now. So the more knowledge you get, inshallah, the clearer it will become. Yeah, yes.
All these issues about giving dawah and handling these issues, I think the most problem is the lack of knowledge, like you said. What's the best way for the youth to really, get deep into the knowledge?
Yeah.
Do you think it's best to go off to Syria for maybe a summer and come back, or for an old time, or?
Well, at least in the beginning, you can begin by trying to pick up some Arabic, try to get into Arabic even before you leave. You can start learning to read the Quran properly and get basic Arabic right here, if you just put the time into it. Okay, and then, like in Syria, they have a summer course. You can go for the summer course and spend 3 months and start to get, orientated, acclimatized, to the knowledge. And then when you have a chance, a break in your studies, then you can go spend a couple years and then come back and continue the studies. But the work should start from here. You shouldn't wait until you go overseas to start to learn Arabic, because sometimes you become overwhelmed. The conditions, the attitudes, And then it's a foreign language, so you can become overwhelmed. That's happened to many brothers who went to Medina during my time. They were overwhelmed. And language was one of the big barriers. If you break through the language barrier, then the whole arena is open to you. So I would say put great emphasis on Arabic. You have writing, to loosen up your hand in the writing. You can practice the script. Right? Then you have reading. Then you have hearing. And you have speaking. Speaking probably comes last. But you try to develop these 4 areas. And then get into it. And try to get some Arabic-speaking person, somebody who can give you some conversation, simple conversations, to start to use the Arabic, because the grammar might seem very heavy too. Simple conversations. Ma hada kitab. Masmuka, ismi Abdullah. Masmuhu, ismuhu Ali. Min aina anta, ana min Amerika. Just basic things even. You start doing that, you'll know the difference between, jumla ismiya and jumla fi'liya, like a noun sentence and a verbal sentence. You'll know this because you'll be saying it, right? That's how children learn. So, try to get into that. So you don't have to go to those basic barriers. And then spend those 3 months, in Syria, somewhere where you can pick up some basic, knowledge. And then when you have a chance, inshallah, go for the real knowledge. Yes, sister.
For a lot of people, especially sisters, especially younger people, it's really hard to go to Syria, just to get permission to go to Syria.
Yeah.
And because, the excuse is, you're going to miss school, you have more important things to do here, you should go to summer school, and what about, and after, as they get older, what about work, what about college, things like that come up. And for the sisters, it's just like, you shouldn't be going alone, kind of thing. So just as far as that goes, what is the best way that you've seen among the youth to gain just basic kind of knowledge while staying in the same city? One of the problems that we've had in the past is that there haven't been any scholars to go to in the community to sit and learn with. Like if you go in a lot of, like even in the city, if you're in one part of the city, there's just nobody there knowledgeable that you can go to. Or the people that are knowledgeable are just so busy they don't have time for you. So what is the best method just to stay in your own city and learn as a younger person?
Well, what is happening now is that there are a number of people and organizations who are holding what some people call Deen intensive programs. So these Deen intensives are good, and some of them are held within North America. Some of them are overseas. Sheikh Hamza Yusuf and Sheikh Anwar Muhaymin, of American brother who graduated from Philadelphia, and other people held one in Fez, in Morocco this summer. And sometimes they're held in America also. There are also other groups. There are some scholars who came from Saudi Arabia, in Toronto and other areas, who held this Dora, this type of ta'aleem sessions. They did it for like 2-week period. And you get some good Arabic and basic fiqh inside these sessions. So these type of training programs are coming about now. You have to be aware, be in contact with people in other parts of America, and spend some time in another city. I'm sure that many of you have family in the Toronto area that you could go and stay with somebody, or some of these groups offer housing too. They have a place to stay. And sisters, if it's done by the group, then sisters can even travel in a jama'ah. Like say 3 or 4 sisters leave from Miami together, along with some brothers, and they go to a specific place. Then the parents would feel more safe and secure in terms of saying it, because it's done as a group, not one individual doing it. So if it's done as a group activity, that's probably a wiser move now. Because it is a real fear that the parents have when you go to some of these countries. Because there's some funny characters walking around, supposedly Muslims, in some of these places. And if you go there, you really can be in a kind of a dangerous situation. So it is a real honest fear that they have for the safety of the young people going into some of these places.
I just wanted to know if you could spend a few moments expressing the importance of brotherhood and sisterhood. Especially yesterday you mentioned in your khutbah that it's a mental war now going on against Muslims with the movies and the Islamophobia. And if you could express how important it would be when things get physical, actual physical attacks against Muslims, how important that brotherhood and sisterhood would be, and maybe some ways in establishing it, and not just talking about it, because we talk about it and we do simple things together, but really having that companionship and how to develop it and how important it will be in the future.
Well, you know, of course, brotherhood, you know, the ukhuwah is very important in Islam, and Jarir ibn Abdullah, in an authentic hadith, says, "Bayatu Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam ala iqam as-salat wa ita' az-zakat wa nush li kulli Muslim." He said that he took the pledge to the Messenger of Allah, peace be upon him, to establish prayer, to establish zakat, giving of the poor due or the charity, and to give sincerity and support and honest advice to every Muslim, li kulli Muslim. Okay, so this nasiha, this is a very important concept in Islam because it involves not only just giving somebody advice, but it means sincerity and support. And a Muslim is supposed to be like a mirror to another Muslim, a supporter also. And so that means that we not only help each other out in the masjid or at the time of the activities, but even during the week at any point, we have to be in contact with each other, like a family, like. This relationship has got to develop. You have emails and whatever, set up networks. You know, check on people. If somebody doesn't come to a meeting, then check on that person why they're not at the meeting. Right? Involve yourself with the imam, somebody in the leadership. So in case there's a problem with their parents, you have somebody even to speak to their parents. All of these things are going to become more and more important as the time goes on in the environment that we live in. Because there's some dangerous things going on. In Toronto, we even had a situation where a young gang called the Punjabi Mafia, the PMs, right? They were Sikhs who were out of control. They wouldn't follow the guru or anybody. And they called them Punjabi Mafia. And they wore big long pants and lumberjack shirts and ring in their ear, big boots. And they were targeting young Muslims. They would beat the young Muslim, chase him home and beat him up in front of his house. Okay, so they came to our youth group, and you know, from an area of Toronto called Scarborough. And they came to our youth group. We were playing basketball, and they said, like, we need some help. Like, they wanted some of us to go over there to deal with the PMs. But we said, well, wait a minute, man. I mean, you know, we can't follow you around as a security service all the time. You have to train yourself. So they developed martial arts courses in the Islamic Foundation in Scarborough, and also in Tariq Masjid. There's a taekwondo classes. Even we had a Wendo class where sisters got some martial arts too. And you know, they defended themselves. And then also, the Muslims reached out to each other because the PMs would not touch the Somalis. You know Somalis? Somalis are warriors. So when the Somalis, when they touch one Somali, 20 of them came. And when the Somalis fight, they go all the way. Somalis and Afghanistan. Right? When Afghans, you fight with an Afghan, you're finished. Because they're coming out of a war-torn area, right? They're tough from the mountains. So therefore, everybody's now, we're all brothers, right? We're all sisters. So Muslims began to see each other as the same ummah. And the PMs got the message, right? That if they mess with somebody who came from Pakistan or India or Guyana or anywhere, then they're fighting against all Muslims. And then with some training, then it calmed down, then the word got out to the PMs. The message, one of the negative things was the Muslims formed their own gang. You know, that was a negative thing because they went into this gang mentality, like, with the colors of their scarf or their handkerchief and hats and whatever. You know, they went a little too far. In that area. But still, it showed us the importance of being ready to help other Muslims in other things beside prayer and fasting and you know, having a speaker or something like that. This is regular, this is life now, in your life. It's very important. Okay? I think we're coming to a conclusion now, right? Because I'm going to have to go somewhere before tonight's program. Any other final questions or comments that you have? Inshallah, you know, I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would help you and make you successful in this struggle here, and that you can be an example for the other youth. There's a lot of youth that are out there, they're lost. And it does require somebody to have the wisdom to go to them to bring them Islam in a practical way. And you need to talk to this, to come open about this. You be open with each other. And those positive elements in the older generation, be in touch with somebody, whether imams or leaders who are positive. And, and be in touch with them, inshallah. And with communications, you can be in touch with imams and leaders in other parts of the community. Okay, so I want to leave you with this and ask Allah to have mercy upon me and you. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.